Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger. I'm the host of the Eddie Network podcast, and I'm glad to welcome my guest today, Dmitry, who I discovered through my son, who sent me a Substack that he had written called Midrange Jumpers for the Middle Class. And I read it and I thought, oh, well, this guy and I think very similarly. And so welcome, Dmitry. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you start thinking about along these lines about the middle class?
I have a broad background, mostly financially focused and totally self-directed. Like I don't have a finance degree, but I moved out to New York City when I was about mid-20s or so, and started working in finance. Just kind of hustled my way into that, and did some public financial publication writing, things like that. Series 763. I took some CFA tests and just started to get a really good like practitioner's grasp of things. I'm pretty sharp about the banking system and monetary operations, like really mechanical stuff. I get that well, and it's like just things I like to dive into naturally, and that applies to. So anyway, yeah, I finance background. Did B2B sales, been in actually crypto and DeFi for the last several years in a very like builder sense, though, not just trading cryptocurrencies around, like actually working on infrastructure and stuff. So, the human coordination interests me, and finance is incentives based human coordination, basically. And like that's how you facilitate movement of resources, their pricing, how you value scarcity, basically. That's an intractable issue. It's not even an issue, it's just a part of life. It's like viewing death as an intractable issue. Like it's just existence,
Right?
requires that. So, yeah, trade and stuff like that also interests me in like globalist type impacts, and but not from like a political pundit kind of angle, more like a mechanical one. Like if you read mid-range jumpers for the middle class or middle market or this, it's not, there's clearly political application, but it's not storytelling, and that's something I really try to avoid, where you tell a moral based story about why you think something is good or bad by just cherry picking data points. Like I'm very systemic. I'm very bottom up in like almost everything I do. From an accounting standpoint, from a biological standpoint, things like that. So that led to this series, and kind of me just being curious about why human coordination has changed as it has recently, and what that's done to the center, and how that kind of hollows things out and changes the makeup of countries, and how trade influences that, how domestic policy influences that. So that's kind of the genesis of that this essay series. It just kind of emerged, like it's a natural interest that came about, and here we are, and it's led me to meet guys like you.
Yeah. Well, can you give us a little thumbnail of what you're saying in these four essays that you put together? Because I I would not be able to describe it adequately because that's your field is not my field. But there is connection to what you're doing to what I do. So kind of give us a sense of this picture that you have written about.
Sure. So right now it's a four-part series. There's one more part that I want to do. I'm not sure when I'll do it. That kind of ties in the mechanical elements of like trade and deficits that part three touches on. But as an overall kind of synopsis, it discusses basically like the patterns of extremes and how middles get systematically eroded when you optimize. Just by the nature of optimization, you end up either really wanting scale, expected value thinking, or really diminutive specialization. And again, it's kind of a manifestation of expected value thinking. And expected value thinking manifests, from athletics and sports. That's why it's called mid-range jumpers for the middle class, because this same phenomena has both impacted how the NBA works, how baseball works. Like you're seeing in all walks of sports, even MMA is starting to incorporate elements of this. It's harder to do with them, but like they're trying. But like they're really optimizing to dominant strategies, because it, on the economic side, maximizes gross margins, keeps labor costs down, maximizes profits. Simple objectives, right? When you really optimize for that, you get you cluster around dominant strategies. And when you cluster like that, the middle is by its very nature unoptimized. So again, this applies to any domain. Like this is not that we tell stories about, oh, it's the middle class problem. Like, oh, but look at the NBA. Like these are unique things. Like These are the same thing manifesting with different veneers with the same underlying forces happening. So the series really deconstructs that. Part one kind of frames it overall with how globalism and Moneyball being the optimization for sports. That's all it is. Based on a book that of the Oakland A's that kind of figured this out. Then the Houston Rockets were the first to really do this in the NBA. And now it's just like everywhere. So it kind of ties it together and lets people see this structure. This is happening in two separate domains, and let's look at why. This is why this is occurring. Part two shows how the structural changes that happen in these national environments from this create things, have emergent elements that we don't ascribe to them, but are results of this kind of optimization thinking. And for example, what I highlight is art or music. No one would think art or music is a downstream effect of trade, really, right? That seems bizarre. Like, what do you like?
Right.
But like when you see like once these things change and then middles get hollowed out and then these overall structural things happen, you see the overall essence and culture. Culture is emergent from a people, right? People have this top-down description of like people choose their culture. It's like, the people express, like it's an expression, it's a bottom-up expression. And as these environments shift, you see real changes in like the art that's consumed, the music that's consumed. Like you can see this, you can kind of feel it. So it kind of speaks on how the environmental shifts impact us. Part three is a strip down of mechanics of trade and showing like, this is how this is happening at a game theoretic level between the likes of China or Germany, who always run really big surpluses. How do they keep pulling that off? The storyteller says Germans are hard workers. China, they're good builders, right? They tell social stories. The Germans just like to save. That's why their savings rates are high. They're savers. Like it's a genetic characteristic. Like these are stories. Like these are stories people tell
Right.
to illustrate why something happened when it's not. It's a mechanical manifestation of industrial policy that's changed labor rules and laws, that's pushed wages down, that has all these second order effects on trade. And you wouldn't think that has impact on trade policy, but it does. And it's kind of helping people see this systemically, how their stories blind them to that. And then the most recent one is really taking like the power laws responsible for this and showing how this applies to like, I think I used like 10 different case studies in there or 11, like very disparate and showing same thing every time happens. Look at this, stop telling stories, like in the emergence of how these tech giants come out too. Like it's just a dominant game theory is really how to see this. And I think when people strip away their stories and strip away Americans just don't like to work anymore, or Amazon's just bad. Like, people don't like the culture stuck. That's why Hollywood makes superhero movies, right? These are stories. People love telling these stories when really it's a manifestation of, frankly, optimization. And you're seeing what this happens when it occurs at every substrate of existence when they start doing that. So, not the most succinct summary of what the series is about, I
No,
guess, but that ties it all in and how goes together.
oh, I think that's exactly what I wanted you to say. And so my question is that um, is this pattern of optimization, is it does it have a limit to it? Does it enter into a phase where it ceases to be optimizing that which has been optimized?
Yeah, great question. So, kind of the thing that eventually breaks this is the fact that it embeds fragility by nature of what it does. I mean, you can
Uh-huh.
see this like just in time supply chains, just in time inventory,
Right.
where companies like pushing everything to the limit. They don't have any surplus. Everything is maximized. You have to maximize every dollar you have. The Japanese, as a counterexample, have noticeably. I'm going to get this technically imprecise, but it's functionally accurate. They don't deploy like every penny they have. They actually keep buffers by design as a robust mechanism. So, like Japanese countries have like an inherently lower, I think, not an ROI. I forget the metric, but the deployment of capital for them is not as efficient on paper. Like if you look at their accounting, like these guys aren't generating the return on invest ROIC, the ROIC of these other ones. What's wrong with the Japanese? They're doing it intentionally. Like there's this safety kind of thinking, but that's a buffer, right? And when you have these really maximized supply chains, these really like even embed fragility makes you very dependent on things not going wrong. So eventually that comes to heel. And reality shows its head. You can only suppress volatility for so long. I wrote an essay called "The Volatility Tax Must Be Paid," where like you see that you can transmute volatility, but you can't eliminate it. And what you do if you avoid healthy hiccups that have creative destruction or little bumps where you survive and you transmute it, you end up getting big systemic problems at once. Um, and so that's eventually will crush it and make America reindustrialize when we realize, oh wow, all of our stuff is made in an adversarial country that doesn't have our best interests in mind. This is not optimum. Like it's spreadsheet thinking, and spreadsheet thinking by definition just looks at numbers and says this maximizes gross margins, this maximizes profits, do it. But embedded in that is complete ignoring of the human condition and like the nature of fuzzy, uh, volatile, dangerous, or engagements that don't go exactly how you plan, and then you get smacked around and realize, okay, I guess we can't. If we hyper optimize like this, there's a price to pay eventually. So that will eventually likely what brings to heel and keeps nations, understanding they have to make a significant amount of stuff domestically. Because when you depend on, especially non-friendly nations, even friendly ones, like everyone's working in their best interest. And once it's understood as a form of game theory, I think it improves this stuff. And the notion of free trade is really kind of fake. Like it's not real. Like it's nice in theory. Like it's great to say free trade. Like no one puts up any barriers. Lovely. The Ricardian thing. You make the wine, I make the cloth. Awesome. We all hold hands and sing kumbaya. Right. It's like that's not happening. Like no one does that. Like China's doing a bunch of stuff, and as they should. They're smart. Good for them. Like they're working to their advantage. We're not. We're just being free trade, and then it's like it's not occurring. If both sides don't abide by free trade, it's not free trade. It's basically a prisoner's dilemma, and you're losing. You're losing because you're not doing a dominant strategy that you have to understand they're going to act in their best interest. You need to put up barriers, and that's how you neutralize advantages. Then you have something approximating free trade. It's a bit of a tangent there, but that's how it'll get broken, fragility and stuff like that.
Well, it sounds like what you're describing is the approach that Donald Trump is trying to take the American economy. Am I right about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, in a clunky way, yeah. But yeah, he instinctively gets this stuff, and he actually has guys on his administration that actually seem to understand this. Like dudes like Peter Navarro, from what I can tell, and I don't know much about him personally, but he just seems to think deficit's bad. Like I hate it. Like he's just a hawk always. That's not interesting. That's the same type of thinking as like an MMT free trader who thinks deficits don't matter ever, and you can just whatever. Like it's the same kind of extreme sort of ideology. What he does have, though, are kind of like Michael Pettis disciples, who I think is like the only economist really worth. I don't even want to call him an economist. I think that kind of does him a disservice. He's like he understands accounting in such a fundamentally exceptional way that he sees how this impacts trade. He has like Michael Pettis disciples, from what I can tell, in the Treasury and in doing trade now, where they understand that the tariffs are blunt force tools to mitigate competitive advantages the Chinese are doing with domestic labor and with the currency. The currency is especially a really big one, but domestic labor manages too. So what you do, a tariff just nukes that. It's like you're pushing your currency down, makes exports more advantageous. You're pushing labor prices down with the hukou system and stuff, makes exports more advantageous. I'm going to stick a tariff on you. Your advantage is neutralized. So it's that kind
Yeah.
of like neutralization thinking that he does seem to be doing, though. It is kind of clunky, and it does seem to be done in more of like I'm going to get you way. Like I'd appreciate it if it was more systemic and actually targeting the things that matter. So, for example, when he tariffs like Canada or Mexico, that's not who you should go after. They're deficit countries. Like they're not like I get why he's doing it, but those guys are not the problem. Germany and China are the problem. Like Mexico and Canada are deficits. They absorb some of the deficits from those countries. If you screw with them, you're just going to get a bigger deficit. You have to think systemically. You have to think structurally, not I like you, I don't like you. Like that doesn't work. That's storytelling. So like he's instinctively right, but he's a little too much of a wild animal with it. But it's improving things.
Yeah, well, I find it interesting, and a lot of the people I talk to are, do not like him at all, and I understand that because he's the disruptor of the status quo, and the status
Yeah,
quo has worked for a lot of people for a long time, and
yeah,
but the question is, how long does that status quo is it sustainable? And
yeah.
That's really the question that I have is I don't see the systems as we currently have them as sustainable,
Agree.
because
Totally agree.
um, it it well, I'm coming at this from a story perspective, which is that I don't see that we optimize the potential and the talent and the expertise of people, period.
Mm, mm.
We're optimizing money, but we're not optimizing the people of whatever country it is.
Totally
And
agree.
I would think that a really smart approach to this is how are we going to mobilize as many of our people to be better at what they do than what they are now,
Mm,
and that would have, I see it as kind of a more of a bottom up approach to how we create strength and vitality and eliminate some of the fragility that exists in the system.
mm.
That's where I'm coming at this.
Yeah, yeah. No, your instincts are, something that when I write about like the bottom up stuff and in other essays related to like, biology and politics and stuff, like the coherent top down must touch the bottom up. So like you might not be able to see the accounting structures working beneath your feet that I focus on and like that, but the stories, like eventually the stories start like noticing this and they'll string together a series of just, facts they'll curate or things that feel right, like the people aren't being up, stuff like that, like there, and that's how we're designed and evolved to think, right? We're evolved to see kind of like narratives that produce a moral outcome that we, temperamentally, which is to say genetically, feel is right. So like this is kind of how Trump thinks, like the instincts here are correct. Like this initially started off as a good thing, just being able to import a bunch of stuff and run deficits and it not really harm the dollar. Like we're the only country in the world that can really get away with that because the dollar is its own kind of weapon, and we can get into that if you
Yeah.
want. But it's a very unique situation with being the reserve currency. There's just as much debt issued in the US dollar from other countries as by the US itself, roughly. I think I got that. And last time I saw that stat was like 3 years ago, but like the US deficit's like 35 trillion, 37 trillion, something. There's like about that much debt issued by other countries in dollars. Just an insane amount of demand for dollars. Like it's just like, so that's why you can keep running this shit and not suffer the consequences at home and not have inflation creep in through the Forex window. So, but that can't last. That should be like it shouldn't take a story or even a bottom up understanding to get in your bones. This isn't sustainable. This cannot last forever. There's clearly a problem here, not only from like a hollowing out the middle element of your country standpoint, but even from a currency and a trade one. Eventually, there will like you'll satiate that demand for dollars. You will have to reduce that deficit. In order to reduce that deficit, you'll have to elevate your exports. You have to build more stuff domestically. Otherwise, you're going to run that currency to the ground. So like there needs to be an understanding of fixing that. And these people that like can't see further ahead than like 5 years, forget that like the US was like, God, it was like half the world's, quarter, was it half the world's GDP after World War II or the quarter? Like something like it was insane. Like we
Right.
everything was destroyed. We were the like we were the guys.
We
Like we
came through
made
without
everything.
any
Yeah.
real damage to you.
Yeah. And the
Or
question
we
to
improved
ask,
our
the question,
standing, you know.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
question to ask is like, what made the US great? Was it that industrial base that created like the powerhouse, superpower we see today, or was it the dollar? Was it financialization that made the U.S. great? Which thing made the United States the United States? Very clearly, the force that we built and what we constructed, and then we started resting on our laurels. We started being okay with running these huge deficits and maximizing optimization for margins. It has destroyed whole swaths of the economy, and further, it's just not sustainable from an accounting standpoint. There's an extreme dislocation. It's been going on since like roughly the 70s is when the deficit started going crazy. It's only gotten really bigger roughly. Um, and that has to be brought to heel eventually. Like if you look at deficits over time, you see them oscillate. And like you're looking at like 20-year charts here, though. And people are not designed to look at 20-year charts. They're designed to look like, 6 months to 18 months and then tell a story. It's like here on the oscillations, like it's going to correct up. I'm sorry. This is just how complex systems work. An
Yeah.
equilibrium will be achieved. How that equilibrium gets achieved is going to be a story. They're going to blame it on Trump like he's a cause. He's not a cause. He's a symptom. This
Is
guy's a symptom that represents this issue, and he's there as a blunt force hammer to fix this problem that's going to get fixed either way. Like Trump or no Trump, that gets fixed eventually. So again, see him as a symptom of an underlying issue. Things make a lot more sense because politicians only emerge to basically sell political products to constituents with demand. And if things are good, populists don't have anything to sell. If things are great, like you don't have anything to be a demagogue about. You can only be a demagogue about shit and scary when like things are not going well. And you sell that product to constituency that is noticing that problem. So again, these are symptomatic, bottom up symptoms of an underlying problem.
So what has been the response to these things that you've been writing? I mean, is it how long have you been writing on? Let me ask this first. How long have you been writing on Substack?
Um, I think like 2-ish years now, roughly. Been on Twitter about 3.5, I think. Like, yeah, about three. Yeah, 3.5. I think June 2022. And then I started in earnest on Substack like a year and a half ago. I started throwing up essays casual on there, I think like 2 years ago, but I've been like active, like posting notes and engaging more, probably like the last 18 months, 2 years, give or take.
And are there a circle of people who are following you, who are constantly interacting with you that kind of constitutes, um, pardon my language here, but your fan base? Um,
I mean, you have steady readers and those who engage, like support, what have you. Like, I don't know if there's like I guess yeah, but there are people who are seeing what I'm putting out there and it resonates and it's conveyed in maybe a unique or probably uniquely clear way that even like a non-expert can read and get rather than just like a bunch of esoteric terminology. And I think that's hit over well with people because it speaks to their instincts, but then puts it in a concrete way that shows here's how this is happening in a way that you instinctively get and they touch it. So yeah, I think so. It's been on ascension and I'm going to keep doing it because I've really enjoyed it.
well, I see what you're doing, what you're writing about is a departure from what has been kind of standard from people who write about economies and globalization, stuff like that, which is to kind of obscure the details
Mhm.
and kind of project the a positive view of it, whatever that may be. But what we really need is to be able to think critically about these things, not negatively, not positively, but critically, so that we can actually
Systematically.
understand what's going on. And I find that that's a growing dimension of what people who are writing on the internet are doing.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Like I would say systematically, because when people say critical, I found what they often mean is that my story is going to be really good. Like I'm going to really pick some good stuff that shows like I'm not just moralizing at you. I'm not saying the US
Right,
must do better. We must, it's this is the people must they're like shouldn't we ask for more friends? Like, that's not critical. That's like a call to action. They'll be like, well, here are my charts. Look at these. I found this chart here and I have this one there. This shows it's bad. And they're still just telling a story, but with numbers, right? Like rationalists
right,
do this a
right.
lot, where they just append like fake numbers or made up numbers and stuff sometime, and it looks like it has a sheen of objectivity to it. What I found that people really struggle with, and God, I witnessed this on part 3 of this series where I broke things down accounting wise.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like people don't want to see that. They don't want to see that, like, and I tell people this isn't a model. I'm not predicting like an economic thing with 4 or 5 different variables and saying this in the future. That's a model. I'm not doing that. That's modeling complex adaptive systems. I don't get. You need to be truly gifted to do that, or God. Like that's an emergent sort of multifaceted thing that the human mind really can't manage. That's why economics is not a real science. Um, but when I show things from an accounting standpoint, like if this, then this by nature, there's no instance where this number goes up and this one doesn't go down. So you see, ergo, don't do this, do this. The deficit must shift. I got so many guys in my comments telling stories like this economist said this and this moved this. I'm like, that has nothing to do with anyone said. Like you look at the balance of
Right,
payments. You can't escape the
right.
accounting. People don't do that. It's like because it undermines their stories and it forces them to operate in a mechanical and frankly more objective domain about if I want this, then I must see this to achieve this. And it doesn't work well with narratives. And people are just like hardwired, evolutionary so, to speak and think in narratives. So I gotta say, I don't see more of that, frankly. And I think that's probably why I stand out the way I do, is because I don't do that as like it's just how I process information. So it's just how I'm displaying this. And I think it's unusual because it just approaches it in a bottom up manner that removes this human agency story element, but still touches on reality in a way that people haven't really seen before. And they struggle with it because then they think I'm telling a story. I'm like, no, no, this isn't a story. This isn't spreadsheet brain. Like accounting is not spreadsheet brain. Accounting is accounting. And once you see this, you see the problems with the deficit, and you see why I'm talking about Germany when Canada's in the news. It's like that's a trivial. Stop focusing on that. Canada really doesn't matter. Germany matters. You don't think Germany matters, but they do. Then you really see like culprits and solutions when you can do that. But it's hard to get people to not do that.
What I see is, see, I think you are presenting a narrative, but it's not a narrative that is binary. It's not a narrative intended to prove something over against someone else. It is simply to explain what you see. And that explanation is really helpful because people well, I don't know this. This is not my background. It's really helpful to me to read through this, and you're giving explanations and you're giving examples, and that's really helpful. I
Yeah.
find, I mean, this is, but I do more narrative things, but I'm not trying to. I'm trying to provoke people to think for themselves. Because if they do not, they will just go with whatever is the dominant, or shall we say, the optimized narrative that is being presented.
Prevailing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the prevailing narrative, the dominant narrative. And I don't think any of these dominant narratives, whichever side you're on, are very accurate and or very beneficial to the
Yeah.
individual or beneficial to a business or beneficial to a community. And so I mean, this is where I've been for a long time, and it's like what's it like? It's like constantly trying to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops. It's
The
really
way I
difficult.
would just yeah, the way I would distinguish between narrative and system thinking is that if I was telling a narrative with, say, the trade stuff, I'd say the United States should do this to
Mm,
accomplish this political means because of curated fact, curated fact, curated fact. Now, but there's millions of facts in the world. Why did I pick those facts? So I curate them to form a narrative. Right? That's why I
right.
picked those facts. Like, why are you focusing on those facts? Right? Everyone always sees the facts they want, and this is where I like, people like, if you just share the facts, it's like, well, which one? It's a lot of facts, buddy. Why are you focusing on these facts and not these facts? You could easily just switch those around. Narrative looks totally different.
Right.
So if you're saying like stuff, and this is where a narrative would say like, Americans just don't want manufacturing jobs more. That's a story. That's just a thing you've decided to tell about a bunch of people because it works and allows you to sustain the political preference you want. So, but when I say this current account deficit, it'll stay this amount unless this current account surplus goes down. If you want that to go down, you can do not only two things, but functionally two things. You can make the exports from others less appealing, tariff. Okay, it's a
Hmm.
mechanical answer. Or you can prevent capital inflows. You tax capital inflows. That breaks people's brains. Because like, why would we tax incoming money? Story, 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 story. Investment, all that. Like again, we want that. That's a good thing, right? It's like, that didn't say that, did not say that. Right. If you think the US is short on capital, I don't know what to tell you. It's not. Like we're swimming in money. Corporations are swimming in money. They just don't even know what to do with it besides buy back stock. The investment's not there. The growth is slow. We have plenty of capital. Okay. We don't like need the investment of China to fund our roads. That's not true. That's not even a story to say it's not true. But the thing is saying that like if that current account surplus goes down by accounting necessity, that deficit will go down too. They will equilibralize. Now, again, but people don't see that. They think
Right.
tax the income surplus account. How would we fund the deficit? That's a story too beautiful because they think the deficit needs to be funded with other people's money. It's a very like linear story thinking. Like, no, this accounting. As yet assets go up, the liabilities match that in some respect. Even if you didn't fund with debt, like equity still has a claim on that. Like it always matches. You bring that down, that deficit will reduce. categorically so, because what you'll basically do is you'll weaken the US dollar a bit when you do that, because the capital inflow has to convert to dollars that comes into the US, then buys up resources, strengthens the dollar. You'll weaken the dollar, you'll make it more competitive, you make the US more competitive for exports. That deficit will go down. It will go down. But people have to tell stories about why investment is good, actually, why investment is needed, actually, why without Germany's euros, how do we do, like, again, these are stories. This is when I do this stuff in here, it doesn't render. Like, it's not like I'm saying like you have to do one of those two things functionally in some way that must be mitigated to neutralize the competitive advantages you're seeing from like Germany and China. But stories flow. And that's like that accounting stuff is really hard to hit home, even with economists. I found like, there's a reason why Pettis and only a handful of guys, as far as I've seen, are the ones like banging the drum on this. And just it's like Pettis has a great line. Actually, it's not Pettis' line. It's apparently it's Keynes' line, where he's like, you cannot argue from accounting identities, but you must always keep them in mind. And it's saying like there needs to be an element of like pragmatic thought, a story about what we want to do, right? Because like you can't figure out what we want to accomplish from accounting. That's not going to tell you a telos, an objective, but it is going to tell you what will happen if you do X, Y, or Z. So like you can't just tell whatever story you want and get disconnected from reality. Like this top-down story must touch the bottom-up reality of how the balance of payments must settle. So that's a great line that says like whatever you want to rhapsodize is fine. You can't forget these things though, because if you do, you're going to get a disconnect here, and you're just going to keep looping, symbols in the mind and not touching concrete reality with how these accounting things work, and you're going to get more confused and frustrated and just keep telling political stories. So I really really try to do what I just described systemically. I'll give some prescriptive things that say if you want this you should do this, and I'll inject some like some commentary too, but like the solution and the framing I would say is almost invariably systemic. I just can't even approach a problem without removing my own kind of moralizing opinions from it, because just seeing myself outside of myself being like I'm just another guy with a moral take. Everyone has that. So let's see this thing structurally, and then we can decide what we want to do.
All these decisions, all these financial decisions are made by people. And the question is, what are they thinking when they're making these decisions? That's the question I have. And I don't think they think as logically as you do. I think you're a very logical person. And you lay it out pretty clearly. So what is it that we need to see about the motivations of the people who are making these decisions that explain why we're moving in a particular direction or not? Um, how do you come to address those kinds of motivations?
um
Or
that's a
do you,
tough one.
or do you, or do you even consider that as a part of your
Yeah,
research?
I really don't actually like what I do, because that operates in the lens. I cover this in a series called Biofoundationalism, where and there'll be a forthcoming chapter in it that shows how really economics is just political opinions with dollar signs. So like your morality, when I say morality I mean it's a set of value judgments, right? So
Mhm.
like why do you value fairness, why does this guy value fair, this woman value fairness, usually a woman actually, and why does this guy value competition and hierarchy and the best wins, right? Why does this guy think more about the sanctity and loyalty of a nation and highlight that versus this guy who's more about liberty, right? Like these are actually like the essay series covers this, but these have genetic underpinnings, like very, very strong ones. Like there's a reason why these opinions split so consistently 50-50. They're a dyad. Like conservative liberal is a dyad. And when I say dyad, I mean they are defined in relation to each other, like masculine and feminine. You can't know what's masculine without knowing what's feminine. Like it's a category. Like what does that even mean unless
Right.
there's the feminine? Same with conservative and liberal. Who's to say what's liberal without a conservative? Like everything, it's just you have nothing in the reference to like what's up without down, what's day without night. Like these rely on each other and they're zero sum. Like you can't maximize both simultaneously. That's just not a thing. um so anyway, drawing back to your question, like we see people's opinions about what should or shouldn't happen as basically a derivative of their temperament. which is a derivative, which manifests in their political opinions, and their political opinions are direct are one and the same as their economic ones. Like it's very uncommon that that doesn't happen. They're usually, if it does, they're like a centrist type. But you show me the conservative, and I'll show you the guy who has pretty conservative economic views too, and likes Austrian whatever, right? And you
Right.
show me the liberal guy, and I'll show you a guy who's reading Thomas Piketty and is reading selected parts of MMT, and be like, oh, we can spend forever. Look at this, like. Of course, you think that. Like you're a liberal. Like you wanted. That's what you're programmed to do. And programming is the right kind of way to frame this. Again, the series breaks it down with like brain scans and like hard data. Like this is not a vibe. Like these are structural components of a collective organism, a society that have been evolved together. So, like, we are evolved to be distinct and disparate by design. It's not a fact issue. Like, you're not going to show facts to a liberal and make them like, oh, I get it, conservatism. Yeah, I mean, it's just not a thing. It's a different value judgment set. So, um, when you talk about motivations, what I hear is like someone's moral impetus to value something more than something else, because everything's a trade off, right? So if you value some things domestically or parochially more, there necessarily is an offset of something else you don't value that's more maybe liberal, universalist, efficiency optimization, whatever it might be. So those are human decisions. Those are subjective moral ethical judgments. Ethics is just basically applied morality. Like you have a code of ethics. A code of ethics is just codified morals. Like here are the rules written down about what our morals are for this section, this job or business. So I don't really touch that because obviously I have those, but everyone has those. It's like having a belly button, and it's like everyone's showing each other their belly buttons when they talk about this stuff. It's like you have this inclination to believe what you believe. So I'm more like structurally, this is a dislocation. This is why this is a dislocation. If you want to fix this dislocation, more of this, less of this. And that frame works really almost, I mean, it's hard to find a place it doesn't work. Because if you look deep enough, you'll see this sort of dyadic type balance at all layers of human coordination and existence, and stuff like that. So I don't want to get too deep and off. I can if you want, but that's why I don't really touch that, because I touch
Yeah.
more like sustainability, complex adaptive systems, and dislocations and how to rectify dislocations. That's kind of where the name of my blog comes from. The dosage makes it so, which is a derivative of the statement from I believe it's a Swedish doctor. It said all things are poison and nothing is without poison. The dosage determines the poison. And that's what I say here. Like the
Oh, that's
dosage makes it so. So if it is it poisonous, how much of it? Like anything can kill you.
that's
But
fascinating. Um, so what I find is that in this hyper media world, that people recognize that they are in an alienated state, and so they look for affirmation and they look for things which um, it essentially becomes confirmation bias that confirms what
absolutely,
they believe because it makes them feel
absolutely.
safe or comfortable.
Elephant in the hate, where John Haidt would call that the elephant in the rider, where the elephant takes you where you want to go, and then the rider's like, I decided that, right? It's like an instinct. The instinct leads in the
Right,
post
but the
hoc
elephant's
rationalization.
really going to go where it wants to go. Yeah.
Right. And the
So
post hoc rationalization justifies it. Oh, this I thought about it. It's like you didn't. It was an instinct, and then you rationalize it with words.
and what I have found is that people become very prone to suggestive, well, they really are seduced to accept suggestions as to what they should think and what they should do. And my aim is to get them to think clearly about themselves and about what it is that they can do by taking their own action, by elevating their own agency to act in such a way that it improves their family or their community or whatever it may be. And it's a very difficult um, task to do because people are very herd oriented and they herd into groups where they feel comfortable
Yeah,
and
naturally.
they're not willing for the most part to step forward and say, I'm going to go change this thing. Like where I live, um, we had a situation arise last spring where it was determined that the school board had somehow lost close to $50 million in its funding, and they weren't quite sure where it went. And that's, I mean, that's horrendous. And
Right.
what do people do about that? Well, not really much. The only people that really were concerned were the school teachers and school administrators, and over 300 of them lost their jobs because of it. And so what do we do about that? Well, nothing really happened as far as I can tell. So it's this kind of passive it's a, this kind of passivity that passes for um, having a noble position that you're taking. And so I bring that with me to hear what you're saying and say, okay, uh, I'm telling my audience that they should read you and they should not look for agreement. They should look to say, what is he actually saying that I can understand and then articulate to someone else? See, I think that's what's missing in a lot of the conversations that we have today is that there's no understanding of the other person. There's only I'm going to pick a side and I'm either going to challenge him or I'm going to approve. And uh,
Yeah.
and and so and those are the kinds of people we elect into public office, and these are the kinds of people who end up in the C-suite of companies, and so this is where I'm coming at what you're talking about, and
Mm,
I'm really interested in particular um, the way you talk about the middle.
mm,
And I want you to talk about the middle, not so much from that financial picture that you present, the mid-range jumpers for the middle class, but rather what you talk about towards the end of the fourth essay
mm,
about the
mm,
things that the people who are in the middle, I'm in the middle, you're probably in the middle too in some
mm.
some manner. What is it that we should be doing to address the kinds of financial optimization that's going on in the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there the essay does conclude on that. I'm taking it outside of just corporate case studies and just exam or athletic ones, showing like, hey, this happens all the time. It's like now applying it to your individual life, to society, to nation, to business. Like, how do you deal with optimization type stuff? Because you have to understand, like, this occurs fractally, meaning these patterns are not unique to again a specific domain or a specific person telling a story. The story identifies the pattern, but then it acts like it's a unique novel snowflake. It's like, well, each pattern, each one's technically different. It's like they're not. They're all basically the same. They have little superficiality, different stories, but structured the same thing, right? So when I say fractally, like this occurs at every level. Like first, the a nation is a living thing by virtue of being composed entirely of living things, right? Like we are constituent elements of a larger organism. So this manifests fractally in that first as things happen at the micro level of the individual, like the jobs bifurcate, the middle bifurcates. Then you see corporations start to bifurcate in kind and preference bifurcation, where like they start selling to only the premium upper class wealthy or only the discount lower class Walmart, because there's no middle. Who are you selling to? So the companies start bifurcating in kind to represent this. And then the nation bifurcates. And you see this politically, extremes, radical kind of like emphasis on that, which is again a totally, you think about it, like it's a completely reasonable manifestation. Like, why wouldn't it happen this way? Why wouldn't you have these dislocations here, and not here? But if you're looking at top down and thinking like each thing's a snowflake, like you won't see those things. You just think each thing's a snowflake, and you have everything needs some kind of political punditry or an economic guy
Right,
giving
right.
a specific opinion, and you miss this stuff. So, I mean, at the individual level, the things that it's the same elements that happens with companies. Like you either want to be really unique, someone who can't be forked by an algorithm, right? So that would be like a parochial kind of position, a physical therapist with deep connection to all of her clients that gets a lot of personal referrals, someone who manages the estates of very wealthy people who like handshakes and like, knowing a guy, like that kind of thing. So a doctor that does very specific surgeries that only 200 other doctors do, right? Those are things you can't fork with an algorithm. Atoms based stuff that has elements that you just need a human for. Okay. And if you think like you would need a very advanced robot to do some like we're talking. Maybe this doesn't happen in our lifetime. That kind of robot. So like
Right.
that kind of thing, an algorithm can't subvert you. So that would be, and that's more the specialization specific route. Or you go the scale route. So like a Google engineer's code touch billions of people, like million, like it's just talk about scale, like holy shit. So it's like some of these positions, like are influencers or people with have presences online that influence millions, tens of million, hundreds of million people. Scale, huge technology allows you to really, really scale. Like it's a scaling machine, is how to really see this. It removes frictions that kept things related to geography and just makes your operating leverage skyrocket, which means you only need this core amount of fixed costs. And once you have that, each incremental customer is like costs you nothing. Like Netflix, if I sign up for Netflix, that's all profit to them. Like me streaming doesn't it costs fractions of a cent to support me. So it's like that's what operating leverage is. Like, for example, if I'm a car manufacturer, every car I sell is more materials I need, more labor to make the cars. Like the operating expenses scale roughly with sales, roughly. When operating expenses don't scale with sales, and you have crazy leverage. And tech is, software companies are known for this. Like you just get a
Right.
core base there and gross margins go crazy. So like, look at jobs that kind of have that same ability. Once you get that base, do I have huge scale in my presence and who I can influence and what I touch? Um, you know, that's kind of the way to see it, like at a professional level. Um, and yeah, but like really looking at those two things, I think the thing that will benefit most and what we'll probably see are, frankly, both mindsets and maybe even regulation that really high that views like human made the same way as organic feels. Like, when you see organic food, you're like, yeah, no pesticides, I'll take it. Human made, it's probably going to be some version of that. There's going to be some kind of premium we're willing to pay. Like, why do you pay more for a hand stitched leather bag? Like, why am I paying more for this? Like, this is cheaper and it's a leather bag. It's just, well, the machine did that. Like this one, I can see like Old Mod has a whole shop of leatherware. Like there's a certain warmth that comes from supporting that. Like, why do you feel betrayed if you go to a concert and you find out they're lip syncing? It's like, well, it's better than them singing. Like it's a better product. Like it's smoother, it's cleaner, there's no vibrations. But like you've like this one, that I feel aggrieved. You want to hear the human voice, right? So it's like there's a human predilection for human presence and meaning that's not going to go away. You're not that will need to be evolved away, and that God, it'll take centuries if it takes. It also feels very misanthropic and frankly Orwellian, dystopian. Honestly, like that won't leave. So we're probably going to see pockets of parochial, sort of anti-globalist, anti-scale, and like not anti in that they don't like it, but anti in that they understand. This is where a story might confuse people. Like it's not anti because it's like that's evil, or they might say that's evil, but it's really anti because it means we know if this isn't stopped, then we lose all this. Like the scale eats everything. So I think you'll see pockets of that enshrining like the parochial specific human stuff. And then after that, it's all scale. Like you got to be turbo scaled out and you got to be real good at reaching a lot of people with not much.
One of the places where I see that's really clear in terms of how this gets separated out is in the question of what customer service is. Because what I find is that the larger the company, the less customer service you get. And I've had some pretty bad experiences with that.
Right, right.
And where, well, anyway, I won't describe that. But what I find is that if you're in the middle and you want to attract people in the middle to your business or whatever, that you elevate your customer service, you elevate the relationship that you form with the people in the middle, because they will become more attached to you or more. I mean, I have friends who run a hardware store, and I will go to them and buy from them rather than go to the big box stores because I know that they're going to take care of me, and I may end up paying more for the products from them than
Mm.
from them, but I'm going to also get service from them that I don't get from the big box stores.
That's a specialization and scale
That's
dichotomy.
right.
So it's like this is what we see with like, chain hotels, a lot of the middle servicing hotels have been doing poorly, but boutique hotels like 450 a night are doing pretty solid. And then like the Motel 6 giga chains are doing fine.
That's right.
With clothing, like the Dillards and the standard like department stores, gutted. And that's one of the case studies in there. And we see like Ulta and really like cheap good stores, or like Walmart, sorry, like Walmart and like really cheap retailers crushing it, or Ulta and these other like niche luxury brands killing it. So people either want either be as cheap as you can because I know what I want and I just want to pay as little as possible for it, or you be unique, specialized, high touch, feeling good. So like what you're describing is like the boutique hotel experience, or like in the gym world, Gold's Gym, New York sports clubs filed bankruptcy within the last 4 or 5 years or so. These are middle service clubs, like 30 a month. They got good equipment. They might have maybe have a basketball court or something, but they're solid middle clubs. Crushed. And what you see now is Planet Fitness for $10 a month, just a gym, nothing else for the most part. Cheap as possible, high scale, get you what you need. Or you have Soul Cycle or Orange Theory, $50 a class, $100 a class. It's a social signaling thing. Or like Equinox, which is now like, I lived in New York City for a bit. Like I think it's like 150 a month, but it's probably 200 by now. So like you've got your preference bifurcation. You either go real high touch local because you're getting some kind of unique service and you're willing to pay more for it, for that human warmth or social signal that goes along with that. But like, the middle, just who do I serve? What's it's by its definition is unoptimized. That's the problem with the middle. And that's why structurally you see this getting eroded, is when people understand what the dominant strategies are. And in the NBA, the dominant strategy is points per possession. Simple. That's how you win the game, right? So how do you optimize for that? You either shoot threes or you shoot right at the base, right in front of the basket. Those are the highest value. Right at the basket is the highest expected value. The 3 pointers are afterwards. The middle is, and I break this down mathematically in the essay, it's structurally inferior. It never makes sense to do that unless you have to, because the defenses push you to the middle now. They consider a mid-range jump shot a success. They'll just let you take it because they know. So like you see this, when you see this optimization, it pushes things to the peripheries like you're describing. And then it's like the middle serves, it doesn't speak to anyone specifically.
Have you seen the ad? And I don't even know what the ad is for, but it's an ad with Roger Federer, the great tennis pro
Mm-hmm.
tennis player, and he's talking about his winning percentage, his match winning percentage compared to his um, points, on the court percentage, and he only had a marginal um, um, number of points over above everybody else, over 50%. But his winning percentage was through the roof, and I thought it was interesting.
Just that
I
little
don't.
bit, games of inches, there's little
Yeah,
margins that makes it big when it's an iterated game. So like you see that little bit, it's like, oh, it's not a huge margin. But like over time, statistically, what does he win like 80% of his matches? I don't know, because like that just adds up. So yeah,
yeah,
it's seeing it like, and that's just how companies see their gross margins. This is how NBA, in isolation, you should have DeMar Rosen shoot a 15-foot jumper. Like that's a great shot. Not at scale, it's not. It's just not like, and if he starts doing it all the time, you're like, I'm going to bench you if you keep doing that. Because like these iterated games, yeah,
and what happens is when they changed the strategy of playing on the court, the public begins to change and begins to follow them according to that. And because I'm an old school guy when it comes to that sort of stuff, and
right,
so I'm more interested in watching five guys interplay, moving the ball around and then
right,
you
right.
know dishing it off and dunking it from, that old school is what I
You're
grew
not
up.
alone in that. You're not alone in that. Like that's a known objection, and kind of like the NBA's ratings are not doing, like they've not been going up. They've
And
been
that's
going down
why,
for a bit. Yeah, exactly. Not
because
exciting. It's why you watch it, because it's like, it's variability. Like this is
that's
another
right.
thing of like what gets crushed by optimization is variance. It's just the same two things, right? So this is the kind of thinking that works well on a spreadsheet, but it produces black and white, and humans need color. Like it's just, again, human condition. This stuff completely overlooks the messiness of existence and volatility and just people getting bored.
but
and
they're
don't
but they're
want that.
not
The whole
they're
purpose
not
of the
making
game is
these.
to excite. It's entertainment. It's not points. It's entertainment first. Points are
That's
a
right.
derivative of that. But they realize I get the most points, I win, and it's you see the externalities.
But they're not interested in the person who has the longest term. They're looking for that person who's going to show up, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, and that 2 or 3 times a year. I used to live in Wyoming, and I would go down to Salt Lake City and go see the Jazz play, and I love going. And it was exciting. It was really exciting, but because they played in old school form, and it was the loudest crowd I'd ever been to. It was really exciting. And if I lived in Salt Lake City, I would have bought season tickets because it was never a dull moment. I mean,
Mm.
it
That was
was
the
back then.
Malone and Stockton days, right?
No, it was Malone had already retired. It was when Rudy Gobert and some of
Okay.
those guys were there. And I mean, I was there for. I went down intentionally to watch them play the Warriors,
Mm.
and it was amazing because they were winning until the last minute of the game, and then the Warriors tied it up and won it in overtime. And it was, but that excitement, that energy that was there, because they were not playing that kind of what you're
Moneyball.
describing. They were all very. They were running very fast and moving that ball very fast, and that dynamic was very, very, very exciting.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's happening with baseball, where like how they, I mean, it initially happened with baseball. And it's
Yeah.
happening in the NBA. It's just, once you introduce statistic and analysis into stuff and one guy wakes up to it, it's like end of the day, like exciting or not, if you're losing and one guy's winning all the time, it's like, well, I can't keep losing, right? And this is why globalism does its thing too. It's like if you just keep stuff parochial and domestic out of a romantic notion or out of like real sustainability, be like this will work over the next 30 years, whereas this guy will only work the next 5 or 10. It's like, but you might get out competed and crushed over the next 5 or 10. You might not. So it's like your hand is kind of forced when everyone does it. That's what makes it a dominant strategy in game theory. Like if you don't, you're going to lose. This is kind of the double-edged sword. Just tragedy of it is that even if you hate it, you still have to kind of do it because like you can't just be shooting mid ranges and be the exciting team. But if you have like a 10-70 record, no one's gonna. It doesn't hit. So
So
you
then,
kind of have to.
so then the one of the skills, I guess it would call it, that people that we're talking about need is the ability to recognize trends and to adapt to those trends.
Hmm.
And
I'd say it's more like the people making the rules need to recognize dominant strategies and do things to mitigate extremes that kill the nature of what your thing is. So like the NBA could easily fix this by modifying 3-point values. Very easy to fix. Like the 3-pointer only was introduced, I think, in the 60s or something. So just change the
yeah,
rules. Like
yeah,
change the
I
rules so it
remember when it began.
yeah, I had to prevent spacing. They added the shot clock a little before then too. Like it's like just that's easy to fix. It's easy to fix. Or push the 3-point line back. But like at the country level, we already have antitrust laws. We recognize that monopolies are not good. Like, and that's the not like those are things that exist organically in any complex, in any kind of competitive environment. The Matthew effect, cumulative advantage. There's one big guy that wins because he keeps accumulating, and then you just have a king who can crush you, and we know that's not conducive to competition. That's a negative thing. We break those up, and we stop them from getting acquired or building up too big. So like we just need to take that mindset and apply it like a little bit more macro at the degree of like behemoths that end up like gutting a lot of like what Amazon's done to the middle market and like to retailers and stuff. It's like, yeah, it's one of our most powerful, great companies. They're a jewel. Like you don't want to crush that, but you can't let them get infinite. Like I think they have like 40 or 50% of retail. It's in the essay actually.
Yeah,
It's a very high number.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, you just got to mitigate that. That is change your definition of monopoly to understand that's monopolistic. It's gutting a lot of other things. And don't let it get infinite. You can let people get big, but they can't become giants.
I
For the
agree.
same reason we don't have monopolies and antitrust stuff.
Well, this has really been fascinating. You've given me a lot to think about. I'm sure it's given everybody who's watching something to think about. And where do you take this? Where do you see your the thought process that's gone into bringing you to this point? What is that? Where does this take you into the future? Because
Mm.
obviously you have a story which is different than most narratives, and
Mm.
you have something to say, and obviously I think people should hear this. So what's your plan? What's where do you want to go with all this?
Uh, like I don't map like I don't map this out like that. Like I mean the and I was describing how I started even writing on this, like it's not some thesis that was handed to me. Like I haven't seen anybody like parallel and compare globalism and Moneyball. Like I haven't, maybe someone else has done, maybe I'm not saying no one else done that. I just have never seen it.
Right,
Right. So it's like I just noticed that and saw the parallels structurally. And it's
right.
like when you remove that story, same thing, right? So it's like that's kind of just how I'm calibrated, and I'm doing that with other things as it relates to po- political, the social, and stuff like that. So I don't like it doesn't have, and I think it's hard to go into stuff like this with like an objective insofar as I don't know, like I'll probably publish them in a book someday. Like I'm sure I'll do that. But like it's been really fruitful one because it's an intrinsic motivation, like
Right.
I'm just doing it because I want to do it. Like I don't have like this content pipeline where I'm like, all right, what's my idea going to be? Like, it's like if I think of something, observe it, I put it in notes and like get to this
We
or keep building on this and do it. And it's like, it takes me where it does. To guys like you, it brought some work my way. It might launch a company,
so
you know.
you would never want to be labeled a social media influencer.
I'm fine with whatever people want to call it. Like, as long, I mean, if it's not
But you
negative,
know
I
what I
guess I'm
mean by
fine
that.
with it.
I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah,
If
you
that's
don't
the
have your
bucket that
TikTok channel or,
no, I won't have that. I mean, like, but if that's the bucket that helps people, if that's the heuristic that allows them to identify me more effectively, fine. As long as it's not misleading, I think that term would be misleading. But like, it's not erroneous. Like it's. So however people want to, I'm more concerned with things being consumed and understood, and getting like people away from this very, again, like narrative, temperamentally oriented. I am describing the world in a way that benefits me if things happen this way, because people politically are basically always voting their temperament, which is to say, voting for environments that are most conducive to them succeeding. Their skill sets doing well. Now, unsurprisingly, the poor and not well-to-do want more socialism. But kind of no shit they want that. Why wouldn't they? They get more than they have now. Like it's very logical that they do that. And the more industrious libertarian types, the guys who build their own cabinets and they're entrepreneurs, they want less government. Amazing, right? It's like these are temperamentally inclined things that are conducive to who you are. So it's like getting people to be more aware of these things as seeing yourself more as like the animal that you are, the creature that you are with these programmed things, and then engaging more productively with others and seeing it not as like this wheel spinning story game, but let's see this thing structurally and how we can create a more balanced situation that benefits us as much as we can be both sides. So I guess that's the motivation. It's also that I just feel compelled to do it. It's just an intrinsic kind of thing. Yeah.
well, I just want to say I think you should continue to do this because I think it's a unique perspective that you're offering, and I think it's valuable, and I think it's worth talking about. And I know people that um, should should be paying attention to this.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you. I definitely will keep going. I have no plans to stop in the near term. And yeah, I've been very motivated recently to really I'll put my best into it. And we'll see how long that goes. No flame lasts forever. Eventually stuff flickers out, but right now it's burning pretty bright for me. So as long as that impetus is there and There seems to be there's an output that I feel compelled to do just, intrinsically. Yeah, I'll definitely keep doing it. And stuff like this is rewarding too, because when I see people absorbing it, my stuff is not calibrated for virality. Like I don't expect to be like, get a huge following. I just don't think what I talk about and how I discuss it is built for, the bigger following you have by definition, you need a lower common denominator. That's just how averages work, right? So once you hit a certain threshold, if you want to keep growing, you have to dilute things down because just by nature, your averages must be lower to reach a bigger demographic. You have to approach the mean if you want to appeal to the mean by nature of what you're saying. So I think I have a certain threshold for how many can read it, but hopefully they digest it, distill it, and then propagate it. And then it ends up being absorbed by other nodes in our human network. So anyway, yeah, I like doing it, and stuff like this is motivating when I hear things from yourself that
This,
are getting value from it.
this is my last question. So, are you talking to bankers?
What do you mean? Like, in what respect?
Well, bankers. This is. I mean, you're addressing, the financial systems of the world, and they're at the center of that. Are you having conversations with people who are in the banking world about this? And I'd be curious to know what they think of what you're doing and how you're talking about all of this.
So I know a fair amount of like, you know, uh, people higher up on like the crypto and some economic financial minds do follow me, and I know they read what I say. My stuff on the Fed, probably specifically, which approaches it very unusually, as you won't be surprised to hear, I'm sure, but breaks things down like very operationally about what they can and cannot do. There's a lot of misleading information about what that institution's capable of, like a lot. Um, and I know, like for example, a piece I wrote on semiconductors and how that gets made and created was actually read. There's a guy who founded a semiconductor company, like a pretty big one, who actually DM'd me. It was like, I love this essay, and I shared it with the whole investment team. So like a lot of those people saw that are probably pretty important people. So, but like I'm not having consulting calls
Okay.
with these types of guys, but like I know this is getting read probably by more people than I can see because I've just noticed from DMs I get from people who have never liked anything. Like I would have no idea they were reading my stuff, but from one direct message, I'm like, I've read everything and I really appreciate like this and like, oh wow, like that's I've gotten this several times. So I'm like, how many cockroaches are in the kitchen here, right? Like there's never just one. If you're seeing like 4 or 5, you probably have much more than you think. So it's that kind of like the reach is maybe more than I think it is, but I'm not doing like a ton of consulting based off it. But I mean, I'd be open to that. I do think there's a lot of stuff I'm saying that has very, very
There's
concrete,
there's a
not
role to
abstract
play
or
there.
philosophical application. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a role to play there. I definitely because it's a clear perspective that you bring. It very logical. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
well, thank you for being here, and send me whatever you'd like for me to put in the show notes so that people know how to find you, and and we'll this will probably come out in about a week.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you can find me on Substack. The blog name is the dosage makes it so .substack.com, or you can just type in biofoundationalism.com. I bought that domain; it'll route to my Substack, so that's a little cleaner. I'm also on Twitter under the handle Back the Bunny. That has a work-related origin story. There's nothing smart to say about that name. It's just a name related to how I originally started the account. But I'm on Twitter under the handle Back the Bunny, and then Substack under the dosage makes it so, or just type in biofoundationalism.com. And you can find me there. DM if you have anything interesting you want to talk about or something nice you want to say. I don't know. I'm open, and you did the same. You did that, and then we're talking now. So I try not to say no to things because it's just spreads
Well,
your surface area of luck, right? Just meeting new people.
yeah. Well, thank you for watching, and thank you all for watching as well. And look forward to seeing you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast.